Welcome to the Normal Christians Podcast. My name is Bo, and as always, I like to say I reserve the right to get smarter because I talk about a whole lot of different topics that sometimes I feel like I know a good bit about, sometimes I don't. But I always have an opinion about these things, and it's just good to always make sure that, especially in today's world, I leave myself the opportunity to come back and say, I was dumb. Missed the boat on this one. Thought I knew, thought I understood, but I didn't really do as much as I thought. Because our words matter. What we say ultimately makes a difference. And, sometimes people say completely terrible things and they deserve what they get. Other times there are situations where you go, I don't know if that got what it needed. And then somewhere in between is where other things fall. And I want to talk about something that I think kind of is in maybe that middle ground where there's definitely some things that were said that were wrong, but some of the blowback is the amount of blowback warranted for what happened. And to preface this, I have to say that I love sports. If you know me, it's something that I talk about a lot. I love sports, love watching it. It doesn't matter what it is. College sports, pro sports, a lot of different sports, man, things like the Olympics, any big international competition, I just love it. Give me that American pride. Even the World Cup. I don't know a ton about soccer. It's not exactly my forte when it comes to sports, but I love it. It's a big international competition where America is represented, I should say. But so all that to say, because I love sports, I usually keep up with everything that's happening in the world of sports. And this week, there was a lot of news about sports in more than just your regular sports websites and journals or whatever it is. The sports world took front and center stage in a lot of the national conversation in different ways. And it wasn't because the NBA Finals are going on right now, even though I'm sure that was mentioned in a lot of national newspapers, websites, and all that. It wasn't baseball. Shohei Ohtani doing great things before the All-Star break. Whenever I'm recording this, hitting a ton of home runs and pitching some great games. I mean, crazy what he's doing as a two-way player. But one of the big things in sports this past week was a feud that's raging at ESPN between Rachel Nichols and Maria Taylor. And if you don't know who those people are, I get it. But Rachel Nichols is an NBA reporter and analyst. She gives analyst for the NBA. She doesn't do play-by-play in the games or anything like that, but she has her own show on ESPN called The Jump, and she's had it for a while. And last year, she was replaced during the NBA Finals broadcast with Maria Taylor, because Rachel Nichols had kind of done the broadcast, again, not giving the play-by-play or during the game, but pre-game show, post-game show, some of that sort of things. And Maria Taylor works for ESPN, not as long as Rachel Nichols, but she works for ESPN also, and she stepped in and filled that role last year. Now, I'm going to say this because it's relevant for the story if you don't know. Rachel Nichols is white, Maria Taylor is black. And so what kind of came out of this little feud is a broader conversation about race and some different things. That's kind of what has taken this from maybe the sports scene into a national scene. And what happened was when Rachel Nichols was replaced last year during the finals broadcast, or knew she was going to get replaced in that broadcast, she said some things. And those things got recorded, and eventually they got leaked, and that has what has thrown all of this into the national conversation, as I said. And getting replaced didn't sit well with Rachel Nichols. And I'm going to read this is from the Washington Post article, but this Washington Post article is citing the New York Times article, maybe expose that came out that really blew the top off of this whole thing. And this is what the Washington Post article, just kind of giving a little summary about what happened, said. quoting that article, it says, "The video of Nichols was recorded in her hotel room last summer during the NBA's pandemic-shortened season in Orlando." So to stop real fast, in case you didn't know, there was a pandemic last year. I sure hope you knew that. I don't know where you would have been where that wouldn't have affected you. But with this pandemic, so much got shut down. Obviously, the NBA was included in that. And the NBA, towards the back end, like a lot of sports, decided they were going to start in different ways. And the NBA created a quote-unquote bubble where they were able to finish their season and eventually crown a champion. So that's what it's talking about here. With that bubble, it was in Orlando, and only certain teams and certain people were even allowed in the bubble. Players' families weren't even allowed in the bubble at the beginning of it. But obviously journalists and someone who works for ESPN like Rachel Nichols was allowed in the bubble. So that's to give you a little bit of an idea of what's happening when it talks about her being recorded in her hotel room during the pandemic shortened season in that whole bubble. So getting back to the article. On a camera that fed back to ESPN's Bristol, Connecticut headquarters, she is overheard complaining to LeBron James's political advisor, Adam, and some last name I'm not going to try to pronounce, that her contract included hosting duties for the NBA Finals pregame show, a job that was now set to go to Taylor. And this is a quote that the article gives from Rachel Nichols that was recorded. Nichols says, "I wish Maria Taylor all the success in the world. She covers football, she covers basketball," Nichols said in the recording. "If you need to give her more things to do because you are feeling pressure about your crappy long-time record on diversity, which, by the way, I know personally from the female side of it, go for it. Just find it somewhere else. You're not going to find it from me or taking my thing away." So that's a quote from the recording that has caused all the brouhaha, that has caused all the issues. So as you can see, Rachel Nichols was not happy about getting her NBA Finals pregame show spot taken and given to Maria Taylor. And from the words, you could clearly see what she's saying or what she viewed it as, and she viewed it as a diversity sort of move. That during that time, not only did you have the pandemic, but you had the George Floyd things, and you had a whole cultural conversation going on around race in this country. And so she viewed it as this was a diversity move to put Maria Taylor, who is a black woman, into her spot and to make it look, I guess, like a diversity win for ESPN in that realm. So that's what she had a problem with. Now, from the quote, to go back, she's not saying she has a problem with Maria Taylor at all. It seems like she says she wishes her the best. And she even seems to be completely saying that she's hating on ESPN, her employer, and saying about how, look, you're feeling the pressure about your long, crappy record of diversity. Don't start doing this, basically taking my things away from me. So she's not saying anything specifically about Maria Taylor. She's saying it about ESPN. But obviously you could see the problematic area where she may not be saying that specifically about Taylor, but she's saying that Taylor got her role simply because it's a diversity hire. She's not talking anything about her qualifications or anything like that. And that, again, is what has thrown this conversation into the forefront of even national media and that sort of thing. So that is what I'm talking about, this sort of situation in a way. And it's created this big firestorm. And apparently, according to even the New York Times article, this happened during 2020. This happened during the bubble. And so this has all been kind of brewing behind the scenes. This isn't some new thing. New York Times was just reporting on what was already happening and what was already done. So there wasn't some new thing happening here. This was brewing behind the scenes, but this has just kind of come into the public consciousness at this point. And as we go over what Rachel Nichols said, look, I'm gonna be honest right here, that I don't think everything she said was bad in the sense of being upset with her employer and being frustrated that that in her contract she has that she's going to host the NBA Finals pregame show. That her contract stipulates she will do something, and now her employer is cutting her out of that and saying that won't happen. I get her frustration with that. But that's where I'm going to say it ends with my agreement, or I shouldn't say agreement, with me thinking it's not as bad what she said, because the rest of it was not good. Because you just can't say or imply what she said in that sort of way. I mean, even if you are convinced of it, even if you are sure that this is the reason that it's happening, if you're Rachel Nichols, you just cannot do it, especially, and this is the key, especially when you're in that setting, when you're being recorded, or whether you don't even know if you're being recorded, but the cameras are on, you're in that sort of setting, you cannot say that sort of thing. And I just say that because at first, when this story broke, I thought that she was maybe getting ready for an interview, or she was just talking to this person in person, and, they were just having this discussion as friends, or, they know each other, having this conversation. And I thought that someone just started recording them without her knowing. And so that was, at first, I thought the big problem was, look, you just got to be smarter with regard to who you are around, which we should be anyway. But when I was thinking about this episode, I thought, yeah, that's definitely going to be the thrust is, look, be smart about who you're around, who's hearing you say these things, which is still going to be a point of this episode. But as I read a little bit more, I found out that she had the cameras around her apparently and all these sort of things. And so to me, that makes it worse. You cannot be saying this sort of stuff. I would say in general, you shouldn't be saying that. But even if you're convinced that this is the scenario, that you're being replaced simply over the fact of diversity, and you're convinced of that, or whatever it is, and to pause real fast, I'm not saying it is or it isn't. I don't want anyone to hear me say, oh, Bo thinks that it is the reason that Rachel Nichols was replaced was because of diversity, or Bo's saying that it's definitely not, because I'm not saying any of that. That's not the point of this, is for me to comment on that part of the aspect. I'm just talking about what the story is and saying that, look, if you're Rachel Nichols, you shouldn't be saying that in the first place. But then also, if you're absolutely convinced and you're frustrated that your employer's taking this away from you and you're just really mad, man, you cannot in that context start venting. You just cannot do that. She has to know better. Especially when she's on ESPN's time, which I'd imagine, I guess she was getting ready for an interview or getting ready for something coming up that she'd be in that scenario. I guess, again, I don't know all the details. I didn't read everything involved with it. But if there's cameras in there, if there's any sort of scenario, just don't say that sort of thing. Again, maybe don't say that sort of thing at all, but especially in that situation. And I think this is a good reminder for everyone to watch what we say wherever we are at. And if we want to vent and be frustrated, because look, we all want to do that at times. We all get frustrated, and I've worked in many different contexts, everything from sales to very big companies, to a detention facility, to churches, to everything in between. We all get frustrated, and we all want to vent, and we all don't agree with something our boss or our employer is doing, and that sort of thing. But we have to be careful when we choose to vent, when we choose to speak our minds, who we are around, and where we're doing it. And I think that social media amplifies this greatly, because social media has given everyone a platform. It doesn't matter who you are, you now have a platform to give your opinion and share your thoughts on any and every subject. And I think that that is great in some ways, but I also think that it is detrimental in many other ways, because honestly, there are a lot of people who just shouldn't be commenting on things, or who just shouldn't be giving their opinion. Because here's the reality. What you say on social media is out there. It's not going away that easily. And people see it. People can screenshot it. And it can have a huge effect on you. It's not some echo chamber. You may be sending it out to your followers who completely agree with you. But then, all of a sudden, it gets to someone else, a screenshot starts or whatever it is, and then you're off. It's just a time culturally, and in some ways, it's good that we're being held accountable for what we're saying, even though I do think there needs to be grace and forgiveness. As I said at the start, I think not only do I want to remind everyone that I reserve the right to get smarter, to learn more about a subject, and then say, hey, I was wrong. I think that we need more of that in society in general. But especially right now, things can go very badly, very quickly. Even if you feel like you're right, even if you feel like you have a point, like Rachel Nichols was convinced she did. And you even have former NBA player Steven Jackson. He defended Nichols on some things that she said. But Nichols' problem, besides what she said, which was terrible to imply that Maria Taylor was only there because of a diversity hire. Again, let's just even in an imaginary world here, let's just say we could get into the heads of everyone and that was completely it. The only decision they made was because Maria Taylor was black in a sense like that. It still isn't good to be disparaging your coworker in that sort of way. But I don't think Maria Taylor does a lot of different things for ESPN. And if I remember this correctly, she's played basketball, so I don't believe that that is fully the reason at all. If you want to come in and say, well, it's because of the cultural climate and this, it was a reason, you can have that argument, not interested in all that sort of stuff. So I think it is terrible to suggest that someone who, I don't know Maria Taylor personally, obviously. I'm sure she works very hard at her craft. And from everything I've seen of her, from football, I saw her mostly on that, but I've seen her at basketball. She seems good at her job. So I have no opinion on anything with that. So I do think it's terrible to suggest that your coworker is only in this position clearly for diversity reasons because she's black. I do think that that's a terrible sort of thing to say. So I just want to put that out there. I don't think that that's right in general there. But Rachel Nichols' problem was where she said what she said, beside the fact that I don't think that that would be fully it. But where she said it and how she said it, even if she has a legitimate complaint against her employer, which I actually do think she has a legitimate complaint, which says, my contract stipulates I should be in finals coverage, and now you've taken that away from me. We have you have a contractual obligation to let me do this coverage. And as Christians, I think this should certainly be a reminder to all of us of something that is made pretty clear in Scripture in many places, but I'm choosing to highlight Proverbs 13, verse 3, ESV version. Whoever guards his mouth preserves his life. He who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. And as I read this, and I remember I'm actually reading through Proverbs right now, studying a bit more, I certainly have this verse highlighted because I know that this is something I personally have to work on because I'm naturally a little bit more of a talker, love just talking with people about all kinds of different things. And I don't mind talking about myself, talking about my thoughts. I'm usually pretty open when it comes to things about myself. And I've struggled with that a lot, where I've said things where I've looked back and gone, I probably shouldn't have said that. Or this wasn't the right time. This wasn't the right situation to be discussing this. It just wasn't, whatever that was. And so I know that this is something I have to work on. That's why it's highlighted. I have to guard my mouth. But I love what it says, whoever guards his mouth preserves his life. Man, especially nowadays, a great way to preserve our lives in some way, maybe our livelihoods, depending on our jobs or our situations or whatever it is just to guard our mouth, to just keep our mouths shut, because it's those who open their lips, they come to ruin. So I think for us as Christians, we really need to get out of the habit of feeling like we have to comment or open our mouths about everything. And honestly, that's why I was always a little bit unsure about starting this podcast, because this podcast is going to be me talking most of the time. I hope to bring guests on and have different voices at different times, but most of the time it's going to be me, at least right now, talking about subjects. And I have no doubt that I'm going to say the wrong thing in the wrong way at the wrong time. It's just going to happen at some point. Again, that's why I start saying I reserve the right to get smarter. I will humbly say whenever I'm wrong, whenever I've missed the boat and I need to correct myself. And I hope that people give me grace and forgiveness. So all that to say, as I'm telling you to stop feeling like you have to comment and open your mouth about everything, I'm doing a podcast, so it sounds a little hypocritical, but there are some subjects that I will be reticent to talk about on here, or I just won't talk about at all because A, I just don't know enough about it, or I'm just not in the realm, or I just simply feel like I don't need to comment on that subject. So I think for all of us as Christians, maybe, we could just stop saying things on social media, right? Maybe that's a good place to start. Just step away. Stop saying things or stop reposting things or those weird chain things that go around. Just stop it. If you feel it and you need to vent, then go to a loved one who, whatever, and it could stay between y'all. But when you put it out there, again, it's out there. Man, people can screenshot it. It can be grabbed. All these sort of things can happen. And I have seen time and time again people get into trouble because of social media. Even job things now, they're checking your social media, they're doing all that. So just be smart. Stop saying things on social media. Let's just guard our mouths in that sense. Who knows how things could change in the future or in your situation, and who knows how your views or thoughts could change over time. And who knows that what you may say now, how it could hurt you later on, because it's just out there forever, in a sense, with social media. And your thoughts or views of a subject may change. You may react off the cuff and then go, whoa, I've changed my mind. And then you could have this record of you saying something that may be terrible or all of that. So I just think we need to stay quiet. We need to guard our mouths as Scripture says. And when we do talk, make sure it's people we know and we trust. This gets back to the context. We also need to make sure we're keeping our mouths shut at the right time, at the right place. But if we do need to vent, because we all will at some point or another, who are those close confidants? Who is that person that we could just be honest with our frustrations, maybe even a little bit of raw at times, knowing we can trust that person, that they understand us personally, they understand who we are, and so they won't jump to the conclusion that we are this, or that we are that, or that we're saying something that we aren't. All of this to me is so important as we think about us as Christians in this culture. Or you don't even have to be Christians, just in general. The tremendously wise advice to guard our mouth. That's how we could preserve our life, especially now in this technology, social media age where information is just sent out and disseminated so quickly. But it's he who opens wide his lips. That's the person who comes to ruin. And so I think that this story with Rachel Nichols and Maria Taylor is a good example of just, look, guard your mouth. Maybe you're frustrated. Maybe you even have a reason for frustration, something with your employer. Guard your mouth. Keep your mouth shut until you can get to a place where you can really feel that person trusted and you can vent your frustration, get it off your chest if that's what you need. But suggesting like she did, doing those sort of things, whoever guards his mouth preserves his life. He who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. And you're seeing that play out in a very real way with Rachel Nichols, because she was supposed to do sideline interview at the NBA Finals, and she was pulled off of that because of the controversy. And now when you Google Rachel Nichols, you're going to have this. And now, probably throughout her professional career, this will hang over her head. And so it's so important. Let's guard our mouths. Let's keep our mouths shut. Don't open wide your lips and come to ruin in whatever that looks like, right? Well, that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining me wherever you're listening to this. And 3515. Until next time, have a good one.